All right, we're going to make a start. Can we get Paul on Zoom? Can you get the Zoom screen on the Thank you. All right, thank you guys. I hope your conversations are fruitful. I am on a mission to get you out of here by lunch, by 2 o'clock sharp. So we'll make a start. Paul.
Yeah, I think it's just a question of doing the readouts from each of the breakout groups now. So talk about.
Do you have an order in which you want to do the readouts?
Yes, we're going to start with TTK. And I've got Paul.
TTK, Sam, are you here?
It's Sam, is it? Okay.
Right. After TTK, who else do you have next?
Merchant payments, that's Kareem. Then
so after Sam, Kareem, merchant payments. Then?
Why don't I share my screen?
All right, so we'll get started with an update from Sam on 3PPI, and then Kareem on merchant payments, and we'll go from there. Kareem is here. We're just waiting on Sam. Paul Baker's in the room. Do you think he should go third?
Well, I had him down as first, but if he wants to go third, fine.
Okay. Oh, Kareem, do you want to go first? All right, Kareem is ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, Kareem, why don't you come on up? Please keep your readouts to 2 minutes each. And for the folks who are outside, please join us and then we'll start. So, yeah, Sam is here. Sam, do you want to come up to the front? Sam, hello, Sam. Come up to the front. Who else is here? Kareem is here. Paul, you can go after Sam. All right, so Kareem, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So we had a very good discussion. Thank you, Paul, for facilitating it, and also colleagues from ThistaWorks and many colleagues from Rwanda who did that, and Ed was also there. So we discussed around merchant payments, different aspects of when we think of merchant payments, what kind of payments we are going to work upon. So obviously there's a broad ambit. You can have customer initiated push payments, you can have merchant initiated request to pay, and then the third flavor, which is again customer initiated, but from a PISP perspective. So primarily what we are aiming for is that we document all the requirements around customer initiated push payments, whether the modality of payment is a QR code or is a alias based payment, because from an inclusive perspective, we agreed that, you know, if we are designing for Rwanda or Myanmar, the two contexts where we have the participants in the group, it would be good that we think through all the requirements related to merchant payments, where the customer or the merchant has a feature phone or they've got a smartphone. We talked about developing a merchant registry component. So the first step would be that we develop the requirements around the transaction, what kind of contextual data or additional data will travel in a merchant payment as opposed to a transfer where I'm just doing a transfer to you, but in a merchant payment, the transfer is linked to some kind of services or goods. So how the transfer of funds is related to what I'm paying for. So that additional contextual data, whether it's traveling from the payer to the payee or payee to the payer, whether our API specifications have enough, flexibility to pass on that data. Yeah. So good to know if they have, but we'll just do first the documentation of requirement and do some gap analysis. One obvious candidate for gap analysis was that merchant registry, as opposed to our current registry for P2P payments. The merchant registry could have more data points. So if I discover a merchant using an alias, those data points can travel to the payer institution, and whether they need to do some analytics on it or do some kind of decision making related to payments, they can do that. And finally, when we are talking about merchant payments, we'll be focusing on two type of payments, whether I'm paying for some goods or I'm doing some bill payments, which are more recurring in nature and invoice based as opposed to an ad hoc payment. And then a backlog for the future. That's also our aim, that by next PI we have a backlog for the future. So we are consciously not working on request to pay because this whole thing is a lot. So if there are any additional requirements related to request to pay and PISP, those we will capture in the backlog. So that's it. Hope I've done in 2 minutes. Sam, thank you.
So hi, everyone. We discussed in our group, we had a very healthy debate discussing the Merge Loop toolkit and what we should be prioritizing on. And let me summarize quickly what we thought about, and then I'll show you what we finally voted on as being the main one. So demo POCs, there was a discussion about maybe we should be hosting it behind a gateway so we could have people connect in and test online. But then we decided later on that we thought it wasn't part of the work stream and maybe more aligned with the sandbox work stream. So Sam, some work for you. Then on the testing side, we wanted to support bulk, and this is really to support the FRMS team. They want to be able to input bulk data. Now you can do that currently, it's just awkward. We thought that we could improve that significantly. And then also we talked about adding in open tracing because that's a very powerful way of tying things together. So if that was inherent into the TTK, then we thought, especially in line with the Digital Public Goods Initiative, if we could create a way that you could create new open API definitions and edit them easily or simply, then that would help facilitate the adoption of using OpenA definitions. But we know that there's a lot of stuff out there that probably can do that. So we thought that would be a spike, sort of just an investigation to see if there's any tools that we could include to help with that exercise. And then digital public goods adoption was also a main focus. So what we decided on finally, number one on the list is bulk input test data supporting the FRMS team. So great. Then the spike to investigate adding and editing open API definitions, that's next. And then number three, to support the Digital Public Goods Initiative by performing some generalization in the code. So this is there's a lot of non-functional stuff here and some functional, but small little things to just make it better. Some of it's taking some code out. And then the last one is generalize the demonstration mechanism. So that's it, guys.
Thank you, Paul. Can I ask Eddie to come over here? I know we have 2 minutes. We'll keep to the time, but initially we didn't have any members joining the third-party session. So I was planning to move to the testing toolkit another session, but we had some members. Eddie joined here, and there were a few others as well. We had members from the TIPS team. I don't know if Muta is here, but he was there. Thank you for joining. I know a lot of you are interested, but there is conflicting interest. So can you keep please describe like what we did and sure, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. My name is Eddie. So the session for 3PI, there's this scenario. There's a user, there's a third party, and there's also consider the provider or a bank. So how it works is there are two phases. There's a linking phase, and also there's a transfer phase. So the user, the third party has to link first to the bank account or the provider, the DFSP, and then after linking, after proceeding with the process, in the linking, there is the pre-linking, where the user now has to, when he clicks on the pre-linking, the phase, so there is this list of providers. So you have to choose a provider after choosing the provider, you'll be prompt maybe to choose. You may have many accounts in one bank account, so you may choose one account or multiple accounts. That depends on you. And then after choosing an account, so that means the linking phase. You are proceeding with the linking phase, which means there is the request for consent, where you have also to the user to the bank account should provide maybe an OTP or a URL for the web, where you have to confirm in the authentication when they grant access. So you have now the linking phase done. So there is also the transfer phase. So as far as now the linking phase is done, so there's the continue for the transfer phase. So where you'll be now transferring maybe the payments from the linked bank account. Thank you. That's what I got from.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Yeah, really appreciate you coming over here and sharing that. So to summarize, we looked at the third party. We looked at the third-party functionality. The team that was there, including the TIPS team members, were very interested in adopting existing functionality. So to Paul and Simeon and others discussing the roadmap, the focus was not on adding more functionality to the existing one, but adopting that functionality and looking at the business side of things. So one question that came up was, does the country or the regulators, do they need to adopt the open API banking standards to support third-party functionality? So I think it looks to me more like, Paul, that we need to have some workshops to demonstrate existing functionality, look at the existing documentation, but also look at the adoption side of things. What's needed for a market to adopt this, and what do the regulators need to see? So that was what we came up with. Thank you.
All right, Paul, who's next on the list?
Next on my list is ISO 222 CNP, and it was Justice.
All right, Justice.
In today's episode of the ISO 20022 telenovela, the role of Michael Richards will be played by a South African guest actor.
Michael can only be in one place at once, whatever he thinks. So.
So very, very briefly, when we started looking at it, we know that there's a lot of work in progress already for the ISO 20022 workstream, and work that is currently under review in collaboration with the standards organization itself. So we didn't want to preempt any of that work and also maybe shortcut any of it. So there, when it comes to implementation and actually development work, we suspect that we might have to wait until the outcome of some of those sessions, and those sessions have been set down already. The group that we met with, everybody would, we shared the invitation. So if you wanted to attend that session to participate in the conversation around our ISO 20022 implementation, you can do that. But one of the things that we did discuss as a group is it would be useful if we had a sense of what the ISO 20022 landscape in our target market, in our constituency looked like. So a lot of our participants now for the session were from Africa. So we could look at, in the African market, who is, we had a number of things that we wanted to put forward as a deliverable. If there's anybody from some of the other constituencies, like the Asian market, or also perhaps the Americas, who'd like to maybe do the same kind of exercise in those areas, please let us know and you can join the effort. But what we wanted to look at from an ISO 20022 perspective was who is currently using it, what are they using out of all of the bouquet of messages that are available, what flavors of the different messages they are using, because there are some intrinsic differences. And we also want to know what are the material gaps between the different flavors that may guide our implementation. So if we needed to implement ISO 20022 in a network, and we know what flavor they are using, what do we need to adapt to make it possible to integrate? Who might need an paper that we proposed to put together. And we had a couple of people from that group volunteering to assist in that research effort. I've asked everybody to please message Michael through Slack to get onto his distribution list, and then we can start organizing sessions throughout the next PI. Our aim is to deliver then a research paper to cover our target market by the end of the current PI or the upcoming PI. That's us. Thank you very much.
Next on the
Michael?
list.
Michael's coming up.
Okay, that's fine. Michael and
Could we
interoperability.
get Zoom on the screen as well?
Thanks very much. Okay, so I think our discussion remained at a slightly more abstract level than those of most of the other work streams. Essentially, we proposed for ourselves two things for this PI. First of all, a set of acceptance criteria that we would apply to know whether or not a particular implementation of an inter-scheme connection was conformant with our standards. And second, a series of conditions that any artifact which connected two schemes together would have to meet. We started with examples in both of those areas, but these are complicated matters because we're trying to do something which it's been tried a number of times in the past so far without success, but which everybody agrees is something that is really worth having. So we started, for instance, from acceptance criteria like a customer of an institution that belongs to scheme A should be able to transfer funds to a customer of an institution that belongs to scheme B without knowing that the recipient is in another scheme. So that's an example. We have further examples in the acceptance criteria. We had quite a long discussion that says, should we start with a subset of acceptance criteria that are going to be easier to reach and then move on and expand them? I was strongly, me, for instance, was, I think, a proponent of that idea. My feeling is that we should be able to say, to begin with, where we eventually want to get to in terms of acceptance criteria. And although we would certainly accept way stations along the way that delivered some solutions, some parts of the eventual solution, but not all of them, we would nevertheless want everybody who was engaged in this to understand what the eventual goal was going to be like. In terms of the sorts of criteria that we would want to apply to connectors, we talked about things like, for instance, finality of the transfer. So the receiving institution would have to be able to guarantee the finality of clearance at the point when the transfer was made. We talked about things like whether we should insist on a transfer only being executed according to agreed terms, whatever that meant in the context of different schemes, those sorts of things. Our plan, therefore, is to work during this PI to having first of all, a clear statement of what we think the acceptance criteria would be, and second, as I say, a definition of the conditions that any artifact that connected them would have to meet. The point at which we wound up was that of saying, are we talking, when we talk about connecting schemes to each other, I should say we discarded quite quickly the idea that that the way in which this would work is to have a mega scheme that absorbed tiny schemes, which essentially is the BSA model, and to go for something which could connect existing schemes to each other such that the existing schemes, if they didn't transfer outside themselves, would never need to know about any of the other schemes. And the question we came round to is to say, would we think of this as a set of bilateral arrangements, or would we want to think of it as eventually forming part of a hub and spoke architecture, such that a number of schemes could all be connected with each other? And we decided that the sensible thing would be to start from the bilateral idea but with a view to being able to generalize it to a multilateral hub and spoke idea at some point in the future. So, a lot of good discussion, quite animated, I think, and some genuine deliverables. Anyone, any questions?
Sounds like a great result, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Paul, do we have one more person?
One more. We have foreign exchange and Mansour, our stand-in workstream lead.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure I stick to the 2 minutes. It's been unfinished business for us because there are quite a lot of issues that we wanted to discuss, and unfortunately, we were not able to even to touch base or to discuss the settlement issues. I think we started by, and Warren has been very helpful in our group. We started by looking at how we will be looking at cross-border transfers. We took an example of Uganda and Rwanda, and see how this money will move from Forex. One of the issues that came up was in terms of the exchange rate, and we thought that with the Mojalo platform, we should try our best to level the playing field, so that when we have got providers onto the system, that at least the user of the system, the initiator of the transfer of the funds, at least he has the option of looking at different exchange rates before that is that transaction is finalized. So we thought that the FX provider, the rate of the FX provider on the system should not be restricted to only 1 or 2. So we should have the maximum one, so that we give the option. And then we also suggested that we should have some form of indicative rate to compare with, and that could be the mid rate of the central bank that is displayed on a daily basis. So if the system will be able to allow for that, then we give the option, and then we make sure that the user of the system is gets the maximum benefit. Then we had a little bit of time to talk about AML CFT, and the tier level of $3,000 currently being used may not be that appropriate for some of our jurisdictions, because people can use proxies and go around it. So we'll need to see how we can build onto the system, and if the system is able to put in some filters, so that at least some of these transactions are filtered through before it goes through the system. I think that was about all. And by the way, we just mentioned also that when we look at mobile money, we are looking about over $1 trillion a year that is going through mobile. So that is not insignificant. One suggestion was made that let us try, because we are talking about instant payment system, maybe we should look at small payments. Then the other view was that let us not restrict ourselves, because that system will grow, and with the growing of the system, so we should be able to take on board transactions over and above small amounts. I think I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really good. Thank you.
Paul, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, just a few words. Thank you all for all of your efforts on this. It has been an inspiration. In fact, it's been an inspirational week. This has been the best convening I haven't been to ever. So yeah, I've really enjoyed all the sessions. It's been really good. So thank you to everyone. Out of this, I'm going to ask that I'm going to publish a list of workstream leads and broadly what the subject is. And I'm going to ask each workstream lead to produce a short report out of this on their objectives for the next PI, the acceptance criteria, the resourcing, etc. And then we can use that as the basis of product council discussions from this point on. We are going to be doing a deep dive into some of these work streams starting next week, and I'd encourage as much participation as possible, please. It's been really helpful, and I'd like to close by again thanking you all. It's been great. So thanks everyone, and goodbye. See you next time.
Thank you, Paul. All right. I'm on a mission to get you out of this room in 9 minutes. So could you have the slides up? One of the things I do want to encourage is we will work with the workstream leads to make sure all the workstream information is up on Moduloop Community Central, including meeting times, documents, links to GitHub, anything, so that at any point anyone is able to find it and just plug themselves in. Also, don't you think it's awesome we have first-timers presenting here? People like Monsieur, a round of applause for everyone here. Thank you so much. Right. So this is your favorite part of this convening. And it's a time where we generally, we've done this a couple of times, and it's really been a nice way to close the convening. We want to recognize a bunch of people who've been doing awesome work in our community. But I want to start with a couple of statistics first. Some of you have seen this slide over and over again. This is how we categorize our community. We've got, there are 4 different levels. We've got builders, we've got contributors, we've got participants, explorers, and people who are just sort of hanging around. In Q3 of last year, we had 17 builders. These are people who are the most engaged, who are taking on leadership roles. Today, last quarter, we have 32, which is excellent increase. In Q3, we had 4 contributors. In Q4, we had 37 contributors, which is a huge jump. In Q3, we had 70 participants. That number reduced, but that's not a bad thing. We can tell that at least out of the 10, about 7 of them moved to either contributor or builder level, and a few others moved back to explorer. So that's actually a good thing. Explorers, those of new folks in our community, mostly who are just sort of figuring themselves out, asking questions on Slack once in a while. And they moved from 106 to 164 people. Some of those came from lurkers or people in the no level category who were 78 in Q3 and who are now just 7 in Q4. This is an incredible, incredible movement of our community away from being lurkers to being more engaged. So to you all, well done. Right. I also want to give an update on the training program. By the end of Q4, the number of total users, this is just Q4 statistics, this is not all time, from Q3 increased 6%. We had 60 new users. We now have a total of 1,032 users on the Moduloop training program. Total countries, we added 5 new countries. We have a total of 99, which is actually very astounding. A growth of 5%. And as you can see, all the courses we have there, the number who have enrolled, those who have completed, and the specific number of enrollments per quarter. Moja 101 is still is still our most enrolled course, but I wanted to turn attention to the one at the bottom, which is the testing toolkit. Many of you have this week been able to install Moduloop on your devices or in the cloud and access the testing toolkit. This is the next step. Go to learn.moduloop.io. There is a testing toolkit course. So take the course. Now that you have testing toolkit on your laptop or on your computer or in the cloud somewhere, go through the course, figure out what it is about. That's a great next step to get you further in the community. So I'm hoping that next quarter we'll have an increase of enrollments at the testing toolkit. And once you're done with that, make sure you also go through all the courses, still very beneficial for everyone. As you can see, we've got some quite a bit of activity in Q4, And those are all the countries that you can see, including the number of people in those countries taking the various courses. Again, these stats, we intend to publish these stats publicly on Mojaloop Community Central. So in a couple of, maybe in a month's time, if you go to Mojaloop, community.mojaloop.io/stats, we'll try and find all these statistics publicly so anyone at any one time can get access to them and pour through the data.